Well, we all need a little green bar somewhere in the cosmos to determine whether we're alive or not. I'm Rima Ilebo, MD. I am the medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation. And according to the little green bar at the bottom of Ralph's screen, I am live. I am live in order to bring you the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. With me, as always, my co-host, co-trustee of the Natural Solutions Foundation, my friend and the man whom I hold in great esteem as a long-term dedicated freedom fighter, Ralph Fusatola, JD. Hello, Ralph. How are you?
I'm doing great, Dr. Rima. It is getting close to Independence Day here in the United States. It means summer, and it means barbecues, and it means everybody is so mesmerized by what's around them that the political temperature goes down for a while. So usually starting around July 4th, but now that was traditional. That was traditional. I don't know if we're in a traditional world any longer. And I see health freedom as an issue that is going to make itself heard during the quadrennial presidential election here in the United States of North America.
One of the ways that health freedom will make itself heard, felt, seen, and will impact us all, even during an election silly season. And my God, I can't remember a silly season than this one. Each time we have an election cycle, you think it really can't get any worse. This is as bad as it can get. And proves you wrong. It wasn't as bad as it could get. This is as bad as it could get until the next election cycle. Anyway, one of the reasons that health freedom is going to be front and center in this election cycle is Zika virus. Now, let's start out with the fact that Zika virus is being presented to us all as a death-dealing disease. It deals death to babies in utero. It deals death to people who contract Guillain-Barré syndrome, which, by the way, is a new gussied-up name for polio. And we'll talk about polio in a minute. It deals death in so many ways that are just emerging. Now, that's interesting because in the almost 70 years that it's been known, it hasn't dealt death at all. But suddenly, just when it's convenient, it becomes a deadly virus instead of an inconsequential virus causing a minor disease. What that means is that the government drumbeats for another vaccine, and today it was announced that a milestone had been achieved and the first Zika vaccine contender, the first candidate Zika vaccine is ready for human trials. Ralph, there's a lot of extraneous noise. Is that something coming from your mic?
I believe it's from my mic, and I will silence my mic.
Okay. And so this candidate vaccine is now ready for human trials. Now, what does it do with health freedom? Absolutely everything, because either you have the freedom to say, no thanks, I'll pass on this vaccine because I don't believe that Zika is a threat to me, to any unborn child, to the world. I don't believe this propaganda, which is the reasonable position. Or you say, do whatever you want to my body. I don't actually care to know what's in that vaccine. And you certainly haven't cared to know what that vaccine could do to me long term. So go ahead, have at it. Here's my arm. Just go ahead and shoot me up and shoot my kids up. Some people will say that. Collectively, there is a term for such people. That term is fools. They are fools. They have been fooled and they are fools. But if you are not a fool, then you will need several things in order to manifest and protect both your health and your health freedom this election cycle. The first thing is information. And I have written a brand new ebook. How many pages is it, Ralph? 60 some pages? I don't know.
When you have the addendum, sure.
It's a well-referenced ebook, and it is about Zika, cancer, and the great culling, depopulation.
And here it
is,
folks.
A well-referenced, well-researched book, and I hope that you will access it. Ralph, can you put the
yes,
link where people can get it? That would be very nice. And there is a cost for this book. It is $9.97. Why do we charge for this book? Because we have to support the foundation, the Natural Solutions Foundation. I don't know if I mentioned that. Is that Carol Rosin? Are you there?
I'm there. I'm just listening in.
Oh, okay. I was talking about my new Zika virus ebook, Zika, Cancer, and the Great Culling. And I was saying we don't give this book away for free. We give a lot away for free, but we give this book away after you have given us a donation of $9.97 or more. More is good. We like more. The work that we do is vitally important, and we urge you to help us support the work that we do. So at the link that I believe Ralph has posted, you can get a copy of my new ebook, Zika, Cancer, and the Great Culling. You can also, if you like, have a copy of that plus General Burt's newly revised book on the tipping point, because you see, our mortality is being enhanced, our longevity is being depressed, and the statistics are showing that we are reaching the tipping point at which, instead of going up, our health and longevity is now going down, individually and collectively. That's pretty important, and there are things you can do about reversing that wrong direction for yourself and those you love. And so if you will, Ralph, if you will put the double book special up, if you would like to have both of those ebooks, and I think you should, then I suggest that you make a donation of $14.97 or more. That's quite a bargain, and we will send you the links to download both of them. Now, there's something else that you need. You need to make sure that your immune system has been working out with weights and bands, and triathlon capacity has developed, so your immune system is strong. Or you can just give it something that achieves the same goal, something non-toxic, something natural, in fact, a nutrient. And that something is nanosilver. Nanosilver is a remarkable substance that the FDA has been trying to get rid of for more than 30 years. But dang, they just can't do it for two reasons. One, the science is so powerful that even the FDA's lawlessness can't get rid of it, although they've tried many times. And two, the fact is that it's a nutrient. It's part of the food chain. There are bacteria that make silver for the very purposes of enhancing the bacterial immune system. Well, we're not asking you to make your own silver. We're asking you to take your own silver, or rather, my own silver. That's Dr. Rima recommends the silver solution, 10 parts per million nanosilver, backed by abundant science. And you can get that by going to nsfmarketplace.com. It's not an antibiotic, and the bad guys, the bacteria, the parasites, and the viruses cannot become resistant to it. So it doesn't participate in what WHO calls the antibiotic resistant apocalypse, which we are now facing. Instead, it changes the respiratory efficiency of the bacteria and of the viruses or parasites, and it also supports the immune system. No replication, no disease, Shazam. Now, those are approaches and facts that the government and the industry that the government works for would rather you not know. Speaking of that industry, for the first time in human history, the drug industry, and there's been one for a long time, in the temples of Greece, they mixed up herbal potions and gave them to people. That was pharmacy. The Chinese and every other culture has always done that. But the pharmaceutical industry announced a few days ago that it is now making more from the direct sale of vaccines than it is from the direct sale of drugs. And the pediatricians of the United States, the EU, and elsewhere where doctors get paid for what they do on the basis of what they do, pediatricians now make, are you ready for this? The bulk of their income from the administration of, wait for it, vaccines. So in addition to being poisoned, you are paying handsomely to be poisoned. Maybe you want to rethink that. And to do that, you have to exert your own informed consent protection. How to do that? Check it out at tinyurl.com/AVD. That's A, Advance, V, Vaccine, D, Directive. tinyurl.com/advance vaccine, tinyurl.com/AVD card. You need to know what your informed consent rights are and how to assert them, regardless of whether you live in California, Australia, New Zealand, or any other medically fascist state, including soon, if we don't succeed, Ohio, which has introduced a bill like the California bill to mandate vaccines for children without meaningful exemptions if they want to go to public school. Totally, totally illegal. But you need to have your informed consent advanced vaccine directive clearly prepared, and you need to know how to use it. And that information is all at tinyurl.com/AVD card. So go there. Your health freedom is under attack. Your health is under attack. And I know you don't want to hear this, folks, but your life is under attack because you are disposable. That's what the depopulationists say. That's what the globalists who are the depopulationists believe. You are a useless eater. And as a useless eater, you can be disposed of. Vaccines are an excellent way of disposing of you. Now, there are other excellent ways of disposing of you that are being thought of, and our super special guest, Dr. Carol Rosin, will be talking with us about that, and we will be talking together about the difference between fake science and real science. Fake science will kill you. Real science can save you. Ralph, before we go to our esteemed colleague and co-troublemaker, Carol Rosin, I've just sort of gone on for a long time. Would you like to add comments or change the topic?
What I'd like to do first is
I think Ralph is on mute.
I am on mute.
Unmute,
Oh,
Ralph.
you guys missed the brilliant things I was saying. Oh
I'm
my,
sure.
oh my. Although I had been posting some links and information up here while we were speaking. No, I think that Dr. Rima, you've covered some really important ground here, and the truth of the matter is, people have to pay attention. And so I posted up here something General Burt wrote back on June 11th. It's a blog entry entitled "General Burt, What Do You Do When You Are Attacked?" And I recommend that folks you go to drrematruthreports.com. Go to the blog and scroll down and get to Bert's very interesting article. Each one teach 10. And he tells us about the Great Culling ebook here. And that's what you need to do as well. You need to get your hands on the information you need. I'm looking forward to listening to our guest who's rearranged his schedule to be here on this live stream. Here we are on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports live stream, as we are every Wednesday evening. So I'm going to be quiet and listen. I want to find out. Oh, and by the way, Carol, can you give us the website that we should take people to?
Yes, for me, it's peaceinspace.com, peaceinspace.com, or email spacetreaty@gmail.com.
Now, first I have to tell you, Dr. Rosin, also known as Carol, that you have the most spectacularly beautiful hair. Let's just start with that.
Thank you. Only woman to woman could we do this.
Absolutely. Ralph, don't even listen.
But yes, you men are welcome to be in on this too.
Having taken care of that, and I wanted to say that to you for a long time. And of course, I wanted to say it in the airwaves. Having said that,
back at you, by the way.
Thank you. You have come on a trajectory of a very interesting trajectory to a position of knowledge and power, insider knowledge, I would say, in terms of protecting us from annihilation by space weapons on platforms above our heads. And I wonder if you would tell us first about your trajectory and second about the threat and what you and other peace-minded people are doing about that.
Well, I was listening to you a little bit earlier, and you were talking about the vaccines that we're paying to be killed with these vaccines. And in my business, the aerospace, defense, peace, environmental, energy, health, education, communication industry.
Oh, that one.
That one. That one is in another form. We're being vaccinated. We're being injected with the most stupid content. It's fiction. It's presented as fact. It's about enemies, one war after another after another. And my trajectory went from being an educator to a corporate manager of an aerospace defense company because I met the late Dr. Wernher von Braun, the father of rocketry in this country. That's how he's known to be. And of course, he had worked under Hitler. He helped plan the escape to get out of there, came over here to the United States, and once again was sucked into a missile program. But in the closet, he and his colleagues at Fairchild Industries and at NASA and all the places where they worked in different industries around this country, and including in Russia where they launched Sputnik. When Sputnik, the first satellite, went up, our guys here that came to the States, half the scientists went to Russia, some of them came here. They were building another satellite ready to go up. And that's how the space program and the space so-called race began. I was called in 1974 because I wrote a 6th grade teaching unit with my classroom about how to survive in a very poor socioeconomic area. My students, my 6th graders, wanted to leave Earth. Get the heck off of the planet, they said. When I said, how do you want to learn this curriculum? How do you want to study? Because this was a really bad area and they were threatening the teachers.
If you may recall, Timothy Leary and Bob Wilson's SMILE program included getting off the planet, right? Space migration, intelligence increase, and life extension. That was their famous program back in that era. So yes,
I had a
t-shirt. You were on the wave. You were certainly on the wave. There's no question about that.
I was definitely on Timothy Leary's wave.
Carol's trajectory moved directly into that.
It did. Yes. In fact, did you know, most people don't know this. In fact, I've never said this in public before. Timothy Leary and Wernher von Braun were very close friends. And I didn't know that in the 60s when somebody took me over to Timothy's house to introduce me to him, and he patted me on the head and said, oh, look, a cute little school teacher. Isn't she cute? Here, put this on your tongue, this little piece of paper. And 3 days later, I was much more evolved than I was when I walked into the house.
I'll bet.
You know, I
Yeah,
could
that
see through
happens.
walls. There were people all around in teepees dancing outside. You know, it was just an unbelievable scene. And there were some very famous people there, by the way, evolving. That's what we called it then. And of course, it was the most amazing trip I had ever taken. And I noticed that Werner von Braun, of course, in his process of developing high space technology, he didn't do those evolutionary things. He was already there at 14 when he told me that he was designing spacecraft to go to the moon. His idea was to be a space cadet, really, just to travel into space. And so that was his idea. That was Timothy's idea, too. By the way, I launched Timothy Leary's, I didn't, Celestis company, but I arranged for him, his ashes to be launched into space when he
Very good.
deanimated,
Yeah.
as he called it.
Yeah.
So, and that was from a military base in Vandenberg. It all ties into Werner von Braun's vision. It was Timothy's vision. It was some of these other amazing, in my trajectory that you asked about, kind of, to me, amazing process of my own growth, where I worked too with Buckminster Fuller, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke. They were all on my board. I was looking for people who had this space vision. And Timothy had put my picture in a book called The Intelligence Agents, where a lot of these people were identified. Mine was in the Genetic Hall of Fame. There wasn't anything written about me, thank goodness, but it was a picture. And he was identifying, Timothy was identifying people, as von Braun did in a different way, who were on this trajectory that you asked about, that were talking Earth to space, but it was space to Earth. How do we build a sustainable life? How do we heal? This is the major issue, isn't it, of our whole planet? How do we get healthy? How do we survive? And Timothy's way was evolution, the evolution of the mind, of consciousness, as was Edgar Mitchell's. I'm, by the way, updating a book that Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man on the moon, the Apollo astronaut, and my very closest friend in all of this, that we wrote many years ago, was blocked, but we stupidly called it When Foxes Guard the Hen House. So we were revealing the whole truth of how the space program was evolving. But all of these people had the viewpoint of raising consciousness, of educating, of showing how we could build sustainable lives, healthy, sustainable lives on this planet. And isn't that what you're doing here? I mean, your information to me is the most valuable being put out on the whole planet. And you involve the latest tools of technology, the latest kinds of things that people are just learning about thanks to you, like the silver healings, the cannabis healings, all of these products and projects that you've been putting forward. I just honor you. That's why I'm so happy to be invited on for this brief amount of time. And I'm going to invite Rima to come back on my American Freedom Radio show this week too, which is the June event. It'll be the week of June 22nd. We're on the 22nd today of 2016, to do a 2-hour broadcast with me that really discusses in depth a lot of the things that you've been doing and the events that you're planning, the different projects that you've been involved in. The books that you guys are putting out are amazing. So I just thank you for being on the show today. And my trajectory that's brought me here to you is one of the most profoundly important moments really in my life, because I'm changing my energy direction. What I've been doing through all of this has been trying to prevent the placement of weapons in outer space. In spite of rumors, there are no weapons placed on celestial bodies or craft or anything like that. That's just all lies.
Stop. Yeah. That's really, really, really important. Let's spend a few moments talking about that. Here's somebody who really knows whether there are laser beams and death rays directed at us from space, leaving aside people who don't come from this planet, of course, unless you want to discuss that too. But it's really important to know whether there are currently weapons that have been mounted above us or not. Let's talk about that. And how can you be sure that there are not?
There are definitely the beams that we're talking about, because otherwise we couldn't be communicating or observing this planet via satellite. There are hundreds now, actually thousands of active satellites that are up. There are even more tens of thousands of pieces of space junk that are going to block us into this planet if we're not careful. But in the meantime, yes, the dual use of any technology, of a pencil, can be a weapon. But it's not being used as a weapon. The communication, observation technologies now are not, in spite of, again, rumors. You know, our minds are trained, I think, intentionally in some cases, unintentionally in some cases, to gravitate towards the monster movies, to gravitate towards the fear, to gravitate towards anything that will control us so that the few benefit. And that's what's happening. And it's happening in this space program as well. Wait, I'm going to hit do not disturb here so I don't keep hearing buzzers while we're talking. This whole fake industry, this whole fake mindset that's going on is a controlled mindset. That's part of the control that is in fact taking place right now. And we have to be very careful to discern.
Carol, you said this whole industry, this whole mindset is a controlled mindset. Could you define what mindset you're talking about?
Yes. It's pretty hard to articulate, but let me give it a little attempt here. The mindset is, Wernher von Braun used to say that technology is the extension of the mind. So whatever the mind can create, that can take place in the form of a technology. The technology can be soft or hard technology. It can be what you see that's physical. It can be what you don't see that isn't physical, but that does exist. It's frequency. And you know about frequency. Are you still there? Because your picture disappeared. Okay.
We're here.
I'm here, but I wanted to save the bandwidth and make sure your picture had the best quality. So I put my camera on visual mute.
Let me comb my hair. Wait. So you have a technology that I define as the educational tool that allows us to absorb information. And the soft technology can go as far as, of course, telepathic, as some people talk about transporting even telepathically. But I want to stretch that into your question that you almost wanted to avoid, or maybe giving me the opportunity to avoid that. I won't, because I'm talking with you. And I think people who might listen to the show will be more advanced than probably most, because they'll be attracted to your latest information. And it's so valuable to their lives that I think people listening will be able to take what I'm going to say now. And that relates to the cosmic cultures.
Before you say it, I never avoid any question or discussion that I think is relevant and important. So I was not avoiding it. Go for it.
Thank you. No, I think you were giving me a little opportunity to stretch into this or not, and I will, because usually I don't. In fact, almost always I don't. But I want your listeners to know, because you are doing advanced healing. You're doing it also with your field in psychology, psychiatric work. The mind is capable of understanding the fact that we are not alone in the universes. This is part of the lie that we have been living under a canopy of lies, really, and behind veils and veils of secrecy about the cosmic culture issue. There's certainly enough credentialed people who have come forward now and said there is such a thing as cosmic cultures, I call them. I have trouble calling it ETs and UFO craft because that's been so discredited and so ridiculed. The people have been so discredited and ridiculed for going public with these stories. But there are major people that have. And so there is another factor here that I don't think most people are considering, so I'm going to just drop it into the bucket, and that is, if these beings, and they are, coming here from long, 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 long distances, and if in fact they are coming through people's walls and having meetings now with more than one person to prove that the people who are seeing these events happen, seeing cosmic cultures come in, and it's not Spielberg, it is actually happening, so that the proof is there among people who can hear this. And the lie that's going along with that, and the one that I went public with in the Disclosure Project that Dr. Stephen Greer had produced at the National Press Club years ago, is that my version with giving the Dr. Werner von Braun message was none of them are hostile. If they were, we wouldn't be here, duh. So it's another one of those lies that perpetuates the wars, that perpetuates more vaccines, more injections of the truth, of the dishonesty, of the lies, of the hoaxes, people call them, that are being perpetuated to us right now. So I wanted to just drop in the bucket that there is, in fact, an extraterrestrial reality. There are cosmic cultures. There is no question about it, as Edgar Mitchell, my colleague, finally courageously said, and others who, I have to say courageously, because look what happens to people that are truth tellers. I mean, I have part of my trajectory is not very pleasant because of it. As a truth teller, it's been a very difficult journey. It's not all fun and games, that's for sure. And there are many, many times when I just want to quit in that trajectory. I want to traject myself into another completely different direction.
It's tough being a culture bearer, as it were. Imagine, we are very much, we modern humans in Western civilization, vis-a-vis galactic culture, are very much like the Aborigines in New Guinea, vis-a-vis our culture. We're constructing the cargo cult, as it were, while at the same time probably streaming through our planet are all sorts of means of communication that we have no way of understanding. Just like the cargo cult believers who are sitting around their fires praying for the cargo to come to them, not realizing that there are several hundred satellite TV channels beaming through their bodies at this very moment. Our technology is not allowing us yet to really interact openly with what must be a very rich culture saturating this galaxy and all galaxies. Certainly after 3.5 billion years, one would assume that would have developed, seeing just how far we've gotten in the past 5,000 years. I can imagine extrapolating that. And I would have to agree with you. Probably any intelligence interested in traveling to this planet would not be coming here for the purpose of doing harm, because we're just really, not a very valuable asset for them, I suspect, if they can travel between stars.
Makes sense to me.
Let me take exception with something you said, Ralph. You said our technology does not allow us to communicate. First of all, we have been communicating with somebody who doesn't come from this planet throughout all of human history and beyond. In the back of the caves of Lascaux, there are pictures of guys coming out of what looked like biconcave structured discs, and they have great big heads and little bitty bodies, and they're there on the walls of the caves of Lascaux, 10,000 BC, because somebody was communicating with somebody. There have been throughout every human culture's records of itself stories of communications with somebody who didn't come from this neighborhood. And those stories have remarkable similarities, which in fact people like Eddie Bullard, the folklorist from the University of Indiana Bloomington, cataloged in their sameness. They are not folk stories that evolve. They are histories that do not evolve. They remain frozen and then get interpreted differently around the edges. So we have been communicating, or they have been communicating with us, or they created us, and we are genetically modified potatoes in their laboratory workshops, which is a phenomenon that I think is probably an accurate description. I believe that Homo sapiens and our predecessor subspecies or species are genetic products of intergalactic folks messing around in the laboratory. So I don't think that it's fair, that it's accurate to say that our technology doesn't allow us to communicate with them. mindset and our enculturation makes it imperative in the cultural system for us not to believe that we can communicate or they can communicate with us.
Very
Whether
interesting.
they're good,
And
whether
by the
they're
way,
bad, whether
folks, General Burt agrees with Dr. Rima on the. In fact, I've heard him say that sometimes he thinks that we're just a junior high school experiment to those guys. But maybe.
well, to carry that argument further for a moment, if these beings have the ability to and the willingness to expend energy, and energy is precious throughout the entire universe and multiverse, no matter how you define it. If they have the willingness to expend energy in whatever form to get here, then it's important to them in some way. And if they're smart enough to get here by folding space-time, whatever they do, doing card tricks, however they do it, if they're smart enough to get here and they just keep doing the same experiment over and over and over on us, and that's part of what I believe happens, then I think we may be a ninth grade science experiment that is done for the good of the younglings. When I was in 10th grade biology, I was sitting at a desk, and by force, by the way, I didn't want to be doing what was next. And the teacher walked by and dealt out preserved, formalin-soaked fetal pigs. And we were given a scalpel and a pick, and we were told to dissect the fetal pigs. This was right after lunch. This was not happening. And we did dissect the fetal pigs because, when you're in school, you're basically a mind prisoner, and we had no choice, or we felt we had no choice.
Were you hoping to be a doctor at that point?
I was hoping to live through 10th grade biology at that point. Because I was exceedingly squeamish. This was an emotional trauma for me. So I dissected the damn fetal pig like everybody else. Now, this was not good for the fetal pigs.
Right.
It taught the fetal pigs nothing. It taught the dams of the fetal pigs who produced the fetal pigs for us in 10th grade nothing. But it was allegedly supposed to teach us something. What it taught me is that I didn't want to be in 10th grade biology again. But the point is that it was an experiment that was repeated by my 10th grade class and the next 10th grade class and the 10th grade class before me. It was not repeated for the fetal pigs' delectation. So one of the things that I think we have to take into account, Carol, you may disagree or agree with me, and you have a much different knowledge base, and I'd be interested in hearing either way. But one of the things that we have to take into account is that a large part of what makes up the history of the interactions is repetitive and is going nowhere in terms of science from a group of people or creatures or whatever beings who can get here when we can't get there. So we have to wonder whether the repetitiveness and the stereotypical nature of it is not part of their educational system rather than our evolvement.
Is not what you blanked out on the last
It's not
thing.
part of their educational system rather than intended to be part of our evolvement.
I really appreciate both of you going back into the earthbound ancient kinds of observations. And then what each of you I hear have done, and we all do this, is we then present whatever our ideas are, as you call them, what I think, I believe is. We do it from our experience or our interpretation and perspective. What I've been experiencing, having worked in the aerospace defense industry, in fact, I call it the military industrial lab, university, intelligence community, NASA and other international space agencies, governments complex. It's all inexorably linked. It's an inexorably linked complex. is that in each of the audiences or in each of the arenas in which I've worked, because I've worked in an aerospace company, several, I've worked on military bases, I've briefed the Space Command, I've briefed the CIA, I've testified. I'm not tooting my ego horn here, but I'm telling you from a perspective position. I've briefed I've done testimonies before the House and Senate, the President's Commission on Space. And in each of these arenas, one audience I call the 650 greatest hawks in America, made up of the whole tops of military and industries, and then the top engineers and physicists. And I've done this internationally too. So I've got that international perspective icing on it. Is that what we're talking about here is coming from a lot of different interpretations, perspectives, belief systems, than religions, including in the belief systems, many. How many gods, which God are you believing is controlling your life, or you're looking to, or mesmerized by, or praying to? And then the self-interests on top of it, the corporate interests. We go into the fear base that the military industrial complex produces to keep that war game going from here, where I think a lot of the war games emanate, and I've gotten in a lot of trouble and hurt for saying this kind of thing. And some of them are Armageddonites. So who cares if we take down the trees? Who cares if the waters are polluted? We've got these tiny little self-interest and corporate interests, fear-based interests, people putting on uniforms to go to war to have their limbs blown off and come back as heroes, except for the ones that are committing suicide every day when they finally realize how wrong that was. Mm-hmm. And so the interconnectedness of us, the respect, the understanding, the compassion for each of the cultures and belief systems kind of gets squashed. This word spiritual, whatever that is, it gets squashed and the ego has taken over. Now, with that, when I hear you're saying maybe this is an experiment of theirs, well, maybe, but really, I mean, this is a human perspective too. From my own personal experience, they're observing. They came here. They'd like to meet the cosmic cultures I'm talking about now, would like to meet with us. They have given many of us, I include myself, messages to give out, which I'm now just beginning to write about. At 72 years old, I've been very hesitant to do this because I know that what I'm going to say is going to discredit me from being able to address, and I was just told this by a friend of mine that's high level in the military, working in the defense industry, if I talk about this, so I won't be able to address certain audiences because I'm going to tell the truth. Well, wrong, because I'm going to do it one way or the other. And you and I, Rima, have talked about reaching a world leader, say President Putin, for example, because here's a man who produced the Olympics, the opening and closing ceremony, the theme of which he brought into the Olympics, where they march around with their flags and the athletes come in, an Earth to space peace perspective brought in with ballet, with opera, with music, with digital video that was unbelievable for the closing and opening of the Olympics. Here's a president that had a theme about peace, as Mother Russia has from the beginning of when I started working in the industry in the early 70s or back in the 60s, when we were all getting high in other ways to see what that love energy felt like. But I feel badly because we forget that we're coming from, one way or another, an earthbound perspective, an earthbound interpretation of whatever this is that's happening in any field on the planet. And I think one of the solutions is to get more cosmic minded, to get high, to get higher in any way that it takes to get there. Look up. Don't just keep looking down at the planet, because imagine the information that we are going to get if we ever agree to stop building more nukes, setting off a nuclear bomb somewhere. If we would all agree to be cooperative, continue the kind of cooperation and collaboration that is taking place among 15 countries, some of whom are considered to be adversaries on the planet. But in space, the cosmonauts and astronauts tell me they can't fight. They're having too much fun, and they're dependent on each other, as we all are right here on the planet. So I personally think we're blowing it by not having a cosmic perspective and allowing that truth to come in.
Well, I want to clarify something that I said. It is specifically the UFO abductions that are so repetitive and sterile.
Yeah.
I believe that they're real. I believe that they're happening, and I have worked extensively with people who believe that they have had or fear that they have had these experiences. I am not talking about the whole spectrum of communication and interaction. I'm talking about specifically those repetitive, stereotypical experiences that seem to stretch back unchanged through all of human history and maybe before it. Now, the rest of what you're saying, or what you're saying, pertains, I believe, to more than just that spectrum of experience, which, as I said, I believe to be real, and I have done research with leading folks in a number of fields, and there is real documented substantiation for the reality of many of those abduction experiences. But my point is that they're stereotypical and just keep repeating. Now, to go beyond that and talk about how much wisdom is available to us if we become willing to be wise, which is what you're talking about, is a very interesting point. And I agree with exactly what you're saying. Would like to amplify it. We are being lied to, and we are being told that it's science. We are being lied to, and we are being told that it's medical science. We are being lied to, and we are told that it's astrophysics. We are being lied to, and we are told that it's geophysics. We are being lied to because science has gone from being an aimless pursuit, that is to say, it is a pursuit whose aim is not preordained. It doesn't have a commercial outcome that it's designed to substantiate, to a pursuit that does have an aim, that does have a pursuit that is designed to substantiate, that does have a purpose for existing, because real science, and I think Carol and Ralph, you both have strong perspectives on this, real science, non-corporate science, cannot be settled. Science cannot be settled. Religion can be settled. Religion has a dogma. Science that is settled, like vaccine science, thank you, Hillary Clinton, the sky is blue, vaccines work, the science is settled. Science that is settled is a science that has been corrupted and is being used for somebody's agenda. Science that is settled is religion, and religion is designed, in my opinion, to control resources, to control thought, and to control sexuality. Spirituality, personal truth, that's another matter. But organized religion, and if I offend you, I'm sorry, but this is how I see it. Organized religion, and especially the organized religion of scientism, is an affront to the freedom of the human spirit and to the truth and survival that we all have to resonate with if we are indeed going to survive individually and as a species. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'll back it up to the abduction, which leads into implants and all of those things that we blame onto ETs. If you listen to the show that I did on American Freedom Radio with Dr. Stephen Greer, again, who founded the Disclosure Project and many other things that he's worked on to try to bring awareness to this issue, he would say to you that he has much evidence, many 400 witnesses or so. I think he said up to 700 now, about 420 of some, approximately 20 of some who testified at the Disclosure Project in 2001, May 9th. He talks about the actual game that's being played on people to make them think that they have been abducted, the implants, but that it's a human condition, that ETs are not doing that. Now, you have, wait a minute, you have to get into, again, you're talking about this and you know that we're all lied to. It's a matter of waking up to it. I'm coming out of that industry where I was told certain lies to say. I mean, I would go into the Congress and basically say a mini truth. I'm a school teacher. I'd like to know if you care about the military going in and maybe making some dust in a 5-mile radius, because that's where they wanted to plant an MX missile. And if the congressman said, no, I don't care, then that would be a possible place to plant an MX missile. But when I went in, what were my credentials? I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. Of course, at that time, I was consulting to TRW, many companies. But the truth was, I'm an educator. So the spin on a lot of this stuff makes it absolutely clear that a lot of these programs that are out there that we're blaming on this enemy, that enemy, that enemy, they're weapons of mass destruction. Oh, yeah? So I actually have talked to military people that I know way more about this because, first of all, being a woman, you get to go into different places and have a different kind of conversation. Isn't that terrible? But it's true. As a military strategist, I can go in and have a debate. I have debated General Daniel Graham and others. Even on the Larry King show, I debated General Daniel Graham, who introduced the Strategic Defense Initiative to President Reagan at the time and got him to say things that were absolutely not true. So in the abduction or implant arena, I'm sorry, I can't seem to blame an ET that comes from another place and then wants to abduct.
Wait a minute, wait. I have to tell you that one of the things that I did when I became interested in 1988 in this whole area, which I thought was complete nonsense, but
Yeah.
changed my mind, was I searched the historical record
Yes.
before modern communication, before modern interests arose in the aerospace industry and so on. And I read those reports very, very carefully.
And they came out of who? And who presented the report? Sitchin?
No. They came out of the Japanese records of what people were reporting 1,200 years ago in Japan, where they had no transistors, they had no technology, and they therefore had to use different language to describe the phenomenology. But what they were describing was the same experience, which couldn't be created by modern interests because the technology of the modern interests didn't exist. So I agree with you that it's been, shall we say, it's been abducted as a phenomenology to be used for mind control. Of that, there's no doubt. But there is
and manipulated and contrived and interpreted when it got presented and translated.
Yes,
so,
but there is a real phenomenon too.
There's a definite real phenomenon. Now I'll take it the next step after this then, and that is that I think we're not going to know the truth until we actually have public, and some people call it disclosure. To me, disclosure's already taken place. It's a matter of who believes it. It takes a while for a lot of people, including it did me, and you're saying it did you too, to even believe it was a real phenomenon. I mean, I ran a Space and Defense Institute, and I wouldn't hire anybody in my institute that said the word UFO or ET because I thought they were wacko until I had an actual couple of experiences. And then I said, oh my God, I have been really stupid. I have been dumbed down myself. I've been coming from an ignorant place. And it takes a while to finally get what the truth is. Now, cosmic cultures have told many people that they will come in and credentialed people that I believe, as long as we don't set off a nuclear bomb, okay, and as long as we don't place weapons in space, because that will absolutely be a barometer for how evolved or unevolved our species is. And that's where you and I come in. We're alive. So we have a chance in this generation to open up, which is what you're doing and I'm doing, many people around the world are trying to do, to present facts. Now, you got into one part that I think is really a bottom line to that, and that is the wisdom factor. What did you call it? The willingness to be wise?
Yes, I did.
That's such a profound statement. It's so interesting. It's an original thought in a way, because you have to be willing to do it. And I find in the defense industry, in the aerospace defense industry, which is where we are, although the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, as you know, have combined into something called the Space Command. So while they look like they're all separate, actually they're all on the same page, heading into the place above all our heads. And he who or she who dominates outer space, who controls outer space, and this is the plan. I could send you the Vision 2020 plan that I don't think is even on the internet anymore. It came out of the Air Force to dominate and control everyone and everything on Earth from space. So now you mentioned mind control. So I fell into the field of psychotronic weapons, mind control weapons. Imagine in geosynchronous orbit, 22,300 some miles up, where you put 3 things in orbit, you hit the footprint of the entire planet. Now, if the game plan, which it is to dominate and control everyone and everything on Earth from space, as an individual or as a group, make you think, make you act a certain way as an individual, as a group, make you sick, make you well as an individual, as a group. We're talking major mind control here. That's actually what made me quit the industry and say, oh my God, they're going to put these things in space. That's what they're going to do. Well, Werner von Braun had just died and gave me, you will keep weapons out of space. That was the very first thing he said to me when I met him in early 1974. You will keep weapons. And I'm a 6th grade school teacher being brought in because my children were pretending to be living and working in space. And they were looking for a woman, talk about trajectory, to be pushed up the corporate ranks of industry. So there I was in my miniskirt coming in, having a meeting my very first day to see an aerospace company. I had only been in a beer company and a chocolate bar factory on field trips. That's the trajectory.
My.
And my first speech was to 18,000 people at the National Education Association convention at McCormick Hall in Chicago. My speech before that was before a PTA, a Parent Teachers Association meeting about mustard being squirted in the cafeteria. And I had to rehearse that in the mirror the night before, petrified. So now 18,000 people. And this is von Braun transmitting his speech to my left ear from no telephone. Got this? So this thing about wisdom that you can only get from either an inner knowing, a quiet place where this develops, or maybe some people are born with it, or from facts like what you are presenting. But what I love about what you guys are doing is you're presenting it from this place of wisdom and heart. And in the aerospace defense industry, there is a lot of that, but it's completely been taken over, as it has from GMOs to weapons, different kinds of weapons, to vaccines, to whatever we're being poisoned by or controlled by. And that's where the last speaker that I had before you, Rima, coming in this coming Friday was Guy McPherson, Dr. McPherson, Professor Emeritus, who has put together many, many reports that show what is going on the planet environmentally, from methane to radiation to volcanoes. But he's the world's leading expert in abrupt climate change, which some people don't even believe is going on. What? I mean, so it's really, to me, a profound statement that you're making, to be willing to become wise. How do you do that? How do you do that in this atmosphere on this planet?
Well, thank you. Thank you for resonating with that, because to me that is an absolutely fundamental condition for our survival. We know that what we know is partial. We know that what we know is distorted, because the act of knowing cognitively distorts information. So we can't possibly be right by learning and thinking. The only way we can be closer to right, which is something like wise, is by putting together thinking, feeling, and the openness to be wrong and to rethink and refeel constantly. And that's where science as a religion will cause our extinction, will be used by those who do not care about your life and my life and your health and my health, and who actually anti-care about your life, my life, your health, my health, your reproductive capacity, my reproductive capacity, your integrity, my integrity. The development of the scientific method. Some people say, well, you either know things intuitively without cognitive input, or you know things cognitively without intuitive input, and both of them are wrong, I believe. The development of the scientific method did not end intuition. The development of coercive education, which has been going on for a long time, ended spontaneous human knowing for most people. Some people rediscover it, sometimes through one method, sometimes through another, sometimes through giving birth to a child or falling in love or losing somebody you care about or whatever. The scientific method is this. Gee, I wonder how that works. Gosh, I wonder why that didn't work. I formulate a question. And then I say, golly, I wonder if it was that. I wonder if it was the phases of the moon. I wonder if it was the fact that the dog barked and that's why the cake fell in the oven. Maybe it could be frequency. I wonder if it's possible to correlate what happened with what was going on somewhere else. Or I wonder if it's possible that there's another factor that I'm not aware of. I will go look for it. I create a hypothesis. I have a question. What's that about? Now I have a hypothesis. I wonder if it's this. And then I test it. I use my brain. I reach out to other people. I create a construct to test the hypothesis. Now the hypothesis is no good to me if it can't be falsified. So the only useful thing in scientific hypothesis building is a hypothesis that can be shredded. And I do my damnedest to shred my own hypothesis, to make it dog meat. And then if it survives my genuine attempt to destroy it, I say, look at that. That's interesting. And I try to test it further and elaborate it. And if I can't make it go away, and somebody else can't make it go away, and another person doing my experiment doesn't find the fatal flaw that I forgot to see, or maybe didn't want to see, and we all agree that there's no way to make this hypothesis fail, then we turn it into a theory. And then we push that theory until that fails. Because science is the march of one idea falling down on the dung heap of wrong information and being replaced by another, and being replaced by another after that. If science is settled, if no idea can fail, if no hypothesis can be replaced by another because it was falsified, then you have religion. And then you get to dress up in a fancy suit with a fancy hat, and you have a ceremony, and you call yourself a priest. Sorry about that.
Well, wasn't that the truth, though?
You're a failure.
Wasn't Dr. Rima, wasn't the U.S. Commissioner of Patents back in 1898 famously quoted as having said, there's no reason for a patent office because everything that could be invented has been invented? And that was, and that was at the beginning, the very beginning of the 20th century, a century in which, for example, Albert Einstein completely rewrote the absolutely settled science of Newtonian physics.
Absolutely.
And since then, every couple of decades, science is rewritten.
The half-life of scientific truth in medicine, the half-life, that means the period after which 50% of what is known, immutable, dogma forever, 50% of that is on the dung heap, is in the graveyard of bad ideas, is 20 years. So in
Wow.
10 years, you've lost 25% of your immutable truth. And in 20 years, you've lost 50% of your immutable truth. Now, vaccination has been hanging on an awfully long time, and it's skewing the statistics. It should be
Well,
32 seconds.
Well, you know, when you think about it, it really only wasn't until about 1986 that it became dogma when Congress passed that law taking away from us our right to redress for vaccine injuries. At that point, it was no longer science, it was settled. Settled, by the way, by the courts themselves when they've said that vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. They are a dangerous instrumentality, to be exact. And that's why, and so Congress took away from us our rights. Something that Congress keeps on trying to do.
Keeps on trying to do. Now, why am I bouncing up and down about this? Well, because science has become the handmaiden of industry that controls policy. That is to say, government. Now, that means that science is done in this way. I have a new drug that I want to sell. Of course, it kills a lot of people. So we're going to do a clinical trial in which it doesn't look like it kills anybody. And by the way, in order to be approved by the FDA, a drug has to have an impact that doesn't kill 5% of the people in the clinical group. 5%.
5%.
Doesn't have to have a good impact, and it doesn't have to have a positive outcome impact. Just has to have an impact on 5% of the people that it's
5% during a limited period of time.
During a limited period of time,
over
yes.
the lifetime of the drug, you know, it might be 100%.
So
And
that's
I-
how they can
and
put
I-
these ads on TV for these drugs that have, if you go blind or if you have,
You got it.
you know, or you die, you just contact this law firm.
50% of the drugs that are approved as safe and effective for the general population by the FDA are quietly withdrawn within 5 years.
And that's
So,
because the release to the public is itself part of the so-called clinical study. It's phase 4. By the way, I took a screenshot of the FDA's pronouncement on that on its website because I'm sure they're going to eventually take it down when they realize what they're saying. But they actually call it phase 4. See the impact on the public.
that's right. So when a drug is released to the public for doctors to prescribe or for you to take over the counter, it's actually a phase 4 clinical trial. After some period of time, if it's too toxic, even for the Fraud and Death Administration, then they will remove it, as they do about 50% of drugs within about 5 years. So you can trust them. They're the government. They're here to help. But the point is, government or not, when science has an anticipated outcome, when the results of scientific inquiry belong to the sponsoring agency, the drug company or the aerospace agency or whatever, when those results don't belong to the investigator, but they belong to the funder of the study, the funder of the study can then suppress the results if they don't like them and never see the light of day with them. The funder of the study can change them, can change the headings so that the bad results are now from in column A with heading A, when in fact they were caused by what would be heading B, and vice versa. They can ghostwrite, rewrite, reformat, and recast the results, and then they publish them in the scientific journals. And the scientific journals in medicine and a variety of other industries are controlled by the industry, because the advertisements come from the industry, and the journal can't exist without the advertisement, in addition to which the peer-reviewed system keeps everything honest. However, the editors of the British Medical Journal, of the New England Journal of Medicine, of the Lancet, have resigned when they discovered, and they've written books, when they've discovered that there are no more peer reviewers who are not corrupted by conflict of interest. So you have corruption upon corruption upon corruption, which is designed to create fraudulent policy, to sell drugs, to launch weapons, to change the nature of reality because it's science, to weaponize food, against your genetic makeup, to weaponize communication, cell towers, laptops, computers, cell phones, against your genetic makeup. Genomicide is the word that General Burt coined. Genomicide. And genomicide cannot exist with the population saying, oh yeah, well, that's cool. Yup. I'd like the latest innovation. I'd like the latest communication device. I'd like the latest medication. I'd like the latest food, unless science has become a handmaiden of industry. And that's what's happened.
Now, because this is mind-blowing, and of course it's all true, and it's so parallel, Rima, to what goes on in the aerospace defense in the war industry. It's the exact same story up to how it's sold. One enemy after another enemy after another enemy, and as Von Braun's warning was that I disclosed at the Disclosure Project, the alien threat is the final card. He called it the last card, that we're going to build space-based weapons to fight evil aliens. I mean, what? So the nonsense in the defense industry is the same corruption. It's the same lies. It's, as you said, it's the weapons of the food. It's the weapons that they put into the form of technology, or in the form of a technology that we're not even going to be able to see because it's psychotronic. It's what you referred to earlier, lasers, beams, whatever, that can control, dominate, kill us in a different way. Now, so my question to you is then, and this would really be my final question before I have to leave too, is there any hope at all? And
yes.
What is it, and where does it come from in you when you hear extinction, when you hear the unstoppable permanent war game, the lies that are going on around that, particularly, by the way, out of the UFO community, and the blame game in the peace community? The Nazis are running the space program. Are they crazy? They're all dead. So it's like, let's get over this. And where is the path to the solutions? What do you see?
The solution. Perfect. And you can't leave yet because we have to have this discussion. Sorry, you're not allowed to leave yet. This is my radio show. You're not leaving.
Thank you. This diva, boy, we've heard about her.
First of all, there is incredible reason to be hopeful, because we are the power on this planet. The globalists, the corporatists, the industrialists, and their puppets, and there are many of them, are still very few compared to us, which is why they want to get rid of so many of us, which is why they want to minimize and reduce so many of us, because our numbers make us the power. It's a numbers game. They have the dollars, we have the numbers. And every single time, Carol, every single time that we, the numerous ones, say, no, don't you dare, to the globalists, by God, they step back every single time. Then the game is to convince us that we're weak and powerless, and there's no point in our saying no. And then they don't have to step back as they march forward to our destruction. So it's up to us to remain powerful and to remain active. And that's why the Natural Solutions Foundation has action items to pound the pimps that they put into political positions of power. I like that. To pound the pimps that they put into political positions of power. I like that. It's the triple P thing, or quadruple P thing. And those work. They actually do work when we take our responsibility seriously. The next thing is, for example, the dissemination of real science to, as good money is supposed to drive out bad, so good science can drive out bad science. And in December, from the December 19th to December 23rd, in Mysore, India, and online, live where you live, there will be a 5-day symposium called Reclaiming Science, Preventing and Reversing Genomicide. And we will have presenters from around the world talking about what the reality is, what the real science says about vaccines and about aerospace and about energy generation and about genetic modification and about transhumanism and so on and so on. And there's a website which I invite you to visit. It's called endgenomicidecongress.com. endgenomicidecongress.com.
Would you spell genomicide for the international people?
Genomicide. Genomicide is a word coined by General Burt. It means the attack upon and destruction of the human genome. And that is happening daily, momently, to make us infertile and to create as what Bertrand Russell defined, as a race that was in essence so far subhuman that it could not interbreed with the elite. In other words, to make us into the Delta workers while they themselves become the alphas of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. You have to remember that these people were crazy as bedbugs, but they have spawned a legacy of pseudoscience and policy wonks, policy pimps, who bring their craziness to our world until we say no, until we say don't you dare. And you, Carol, are part of that don't you dare, because you haven't even talked yet about your work in the efforts to stop weaponizing space. And you will be presenting at the Congress in Mysore, India.
And Dr. Rima, you'll be on Carol's radio program this Friday.
Yes.
Yes, this will be on
So-
AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the
this.
Carol Rosin show, but it will really be Dr. Rima's show because there's so much to go over in this.
Well, it's a continuation of an interesting discussion. You two have touched on so many extraordinary points. I know you have to get going. It's 7:17 here, so we have about 40 minutes on our regular scheduled live stream. You're welcome to stay with us as long as you'd like. I know
Unfortunately, I have to go into another meeting now, but
Yeah.
I hope that you'll go on with more about this event that you're talking about in India, because I
That's what we're
think
talking
people
about.
will be so interested in this. And I know that the listeners that I'll be tuning into your show here will want to hear more about it. And I hope many people will go to that meeting in India. I think it's important if a lot of, I know it's difficult to travel now. People are afraid for many reasons, but I think it's also good for us to gather when we can, and also to tune in via electronics.
But it's
But
going to be
we have
live streamed
created-
online. The whole world can participate.
I
The
mean,
best.
definitely come to India. What an amazing experience. Mysore is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But also come to the meeting electronically. This
Yeah.
is a meeting that can quite literally change the world if you participate and you disseminate it. And so I'm inviting people to go to endgenomicidecongress.com and find out how you can attend and find out how you can participate, and then do something as a presenter, and then do something else. Share it. Share it with your community. Share it with your community's community. Share it with Facebook and Twitter and all the lovely things that the CIA has given us to disseminate information about ourselves. Share it. Let everyone on the planet know that this is their meeting for their hope and their survival by the dissemination of our truth.
Thank you. And I would say share it with the people that you think would be least likely to want to listen in. Invite
Yes.
them for dinner and do what you have to do to get them to tune in. And especially if you have any contacts with decision makers in the military industrial government complex, because I find that it's wonderful that we're all talking to each other, but I find that there are people who now know that the problems are extremely serious on this planet. They may not know it even factually, but something in their gut is saying, I have grandchildren, what is going on here? You know, this is not working for most people on the planet, the system. So I say invite decision makers that you know or people who influence them. It's really important for us to start bringing in these new people now. And I want to mention one more thing too, if I may, before I go. We have had our language stolen from us. And I had a paper that I testified with before the Senate, and they tried to block it. I think they did block it from being on the congressional written record, which we're supposed to be able to turn in a written testimony with our oral testimony before the Congress and Senate. But mine was about language that was stolen from us, and it was on a document that I got right out of the Heritage Foundation. A quote, mole gave it to me. And one of the senators said, well, you must have written this. And I went, really? I could have written this? No. And it said in it that we will quote, and this is, I should phrase it. We will steal the language of the arms control community, regardless of the merits or non-merits of the system. For example, we do want a new world order. We don't want the old world order the way the new world order is being described, right? We are globalists. In fact, we're universalists. But it was stolen and given this other context. I personally would like to see us bring it back into our conversation. I am a global world citizen. I was part of Gary Davis's World Government of World Citizens. Isaac Asimov gave me this position of being space commissioner for the World Government of World Citizens. I was afraid to say it back then because of the ridicule factor among the people I wanted to be my friends, the peace activists, the environmental activists. Of course, they all thought I must be a Nazi because I worked with Wernher von Braun. I mean, really? So I say, let's try to get the language in a language, at least in English, that we really mean to say when we're describing all of this. And Timothy Leary used to say, as best you can, stay away from isms. So, you know, isms, when you find out what they are, then move on and make sure we've created our own systems. And that's why I honor you so much. Thank you so much for creating a whole new system for healing, for our evolution, for sustainable, healthy, happy lives. And I want to end my little piece of it here with actually what Ralph brought in at the very beginning, Timothy Leary's smile. When I first met Wernher von Braun, in the first few minutes, he told me he was dying of cancer and he was given 3 weeks to maybe a little bit more to live. So he was leaving the industry with tubes hanging out of himself from cancer treatments. And he said, Carol, you must remember to keep your sense of humor. And he was scribbling on a little piece of paper the whole time he was talking to me for a couple of hours. And at the end, he ripped it off at the end of the paper that he was scribbling, and it had the word humor in little circles, spelled out humor. And then I met Timothy, who proceeded to tell me that they were very close friends. And Timothy shared with me, Ralph, that smile that both of you have in the middle of this amazingly serious information that you guys are presenting. Bless you. Thank you for doing this. And that smile, I'll repeat because you did it at the beginning of the show, is space migration, because we are migrating into the cosmos, realizing who we are floating on this little mud ball in the cosmos every single minute of our lives, every second of our lives. Space migration. We are migrating into space further, whether we like it or not. And that's one of the ways that we're going to find out more about ourselves, physically, spiritually, mentally, psychologically, socially, hopefully raising our next I squared, SM, space migration, I squared, hopefully raising our intelligence level, hopefully raising the I squared, and the LE, life extension, because thanks to you, we have a chance really to extend our lives, to have that whole life extension process evolve. So bless you. Thank you so much for inviting me onto this show. I look forward to the June 24th version of American Freedom Radio, the Carol Rosin Show, starring Rima for sure. Dr. Rima, thank you so much for all of your work, and Ralph.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
May I share very briefly that we are talking about ridding the world of rats, and you are now going to a meeting about ridding your
Rats
particular town
in
of
Ashland.
rats because the town of Hamlin has become overridden. The adorable town where you live. And so thank you so much for your time. I honor and celebrate your work. I love what you're doing, and I'm so pleased that we are working together for exactly the same goals and exactly the same reasons. So thank you very much.
Thank you, too. And we have people around the world that are doing this, too. Russia and China introduced the treaty to try to prevent the placement of weapons in space. We'll talk a little bit about that on this show, June 24th, too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much
Have a
love.
lovely meeting and get rid of the rats.
Thank you. On my way.
Try some pipes.
All of them.
Right, try some pipes. That's all. All right.
Which kind
All
of
right.
Thank you so much.
The doctor, yeah, right. The Dr. Rima Truth Reports is continuing. Carol Rosin is off to rid the world of rats, or rid her local town of rats. And that's quite serious. The biosphere is readjusting itself, and sometimes we don't like the results very much. Speaking of which, brings me to Zika. Zika. Now, you are being told, by the way, that I am so pleased. Carol Rosin and I have been corresponding and enjoying each other for quite a long time, and this is the first time she's ever been on the show. It was just delightful. You are being lied to in yet another way. You're being told that Zika is dangerous, that Zika is a baby killer, that Zika causes Guillain-Barré syndrome, and Zika even causes death. And that's all nonsense. What causes, if the Zika doesn't cause paralysis, by the way, and let's talk for a moment about Guillain-Barré syndrome. It has another name. Its name is polio. Now, today, India announced, no, I'm sorry, yesterday, India announced, and Ralph, if you go to the chat, the mutual chat that we have with our staff writer, you will see a link that perhaps you would like to put up on our live stream board, so to speak. And that link says that India has identified a polio virus presence in the sewage in Hyderabad. And that polio virus, because the polio virus is spread through feces, that polio virus is from the vaccine, the oral polio vaccine that children throughout India have been getting. But not to worry, it says. Even though the polio vaccine has spread the polio virus, which is infective, even though that's true, India, and there are cases of that virus now being spread by fecal contamination, so more people are getting polio from the vaccine. Nonetheless, India has not lost its status as a polio-free nation, despite the fact that there are more and more cases of polio. Why? Now, here's some of this pseudoscience, science with an agenda, science with an outcome that's been set before the science has been done. Why? Because, and I do hope you have your seatbelts on, your intellectual seatbelts, because the cases of polio that have been identified as being spread by the vaccine are not wild type polio, they're vaccine type polio, and therefore India is still free, they say, of wild type polio, which is what they really mean by polio free. Now I ask you,
I see dogma, Dr. Rima. I don't see science. This is a perfect example of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Or how many demons can dance on the head of a pin? Or the head, rather, I'm sorry, you're wrong, Ralph. It's how many demons can dance on the head of a vaccine syringe.
Right.
This is not science. This is despicable. Despicable. And people are supposed to believe this crap. Oh, okay. India is still polio free because the polio that they have is the polio that they spread with the vaccine. So it doesn't count. Even though the CDC has said for years on its website that the only cause of polio globally is the polio vaccine. But they're wrong, because there's a new cause of polio, and it's other vaccines. They're calling it Guillain-Barré syndrome. That became a popular term during the swine flu epidemic farce of 1976, was it, or 78, Ralph?
Yeah, 76 was the first swine flu pandemic.
Right, the Ronald Reagan swine flu pandemic farce. Well, now we had another one in 2009, another swine flu pandemic farce, and we have many, many vaccine farces going on. And when people become paralyzed, when they develop autoimmune responses and ascending paralysis, so the nerves are destroyed, it can't be distinguished from polio.
So you're telling me that this idea of a polio virus that spreads this paralysis disease is not the whole picture?
There are many ways to develop the final common pathway known as ascending flaccid paralysis or polio. You can develop it from contact with DDT. You can develop it from contact with Roundup. You can develop it from contact with any vaccine, with the aluminum that's in vaccines, with the mercury, with God knows what. And if you have more and more vaccines, then you can have more and more opportunity to develop an acute flaccid paralysis. And you can call it Guillain-Barré, you can call it tuna fish, you can call it polio. It's the same thing. It's an attack on the nerves by the immune system, which is trying to sort it out, and that's the best it can do.
Ah, all right. So the original 1950s polio virus was just a little how shall I put it? A little blip along the way that would normally have, as all the other diseases in that era went, declining until the introduction of the vaccine, and then we have a new oscillation.
The actual number of cases had declined almost to zero when the vaccines were introduced. The Salk and the Sabine vaccines were introduced, and then they skyrocketed. I wonder why that was.
Live virus vaccine?
Live virus vaccine. Now, you have to understand, every vaccine is dangerous. Every vaccine causes harm, and every vaccination with every vaccine causes harm. It is clear and has been all over the media recently, and I've been saying this for decades, there is zero scientific study to show that injecting multiple vaccines at the same time or in close temporal proximity is safe. Not one study has ever been done. Not one. And yet, your baby at a well baby visit, there's an irony. That's like the Justice Department, right? Your baby at a well baby visit may receive 8 or 9 vaccines at the same time. Why? Because it's convenient and because pediatricians now make more from the delivery of vaccines than from any other activity. That's why. And so do pharmaceuticals. But not only vaccine science is perverted and dishonest and unreliable and deadly. Right now, I don't know of very many areas of science, I can't think of any areas of science that are not perverted and corporate riddled and destructive and deadly. And so the name of the Congress in December 19th through 23rd in Mysore, India, and online is very carefully chosen. It's Reclaiming Science, Preventing and Repairing Genomicide. Think about that, restoring science. If science belongs to you and to me, then we can own the outcome without controlling the outcome. But if science belongs to Monsanto or Martin Marietta, then anything that comes out of them, any science that comes out of them is corrupt and compromised. Think about that. How much of our life is based on what we're told is scientifically factual, is scientifically proven to be safe? Did you know that a vaccine that was approved for the use in third world countries around the world for the purpose of infertility induction was said to be safe and effective and have 0 side effects after it was tested on 180 women?
How did they come to that conclusion, Dr. Rima?
Because the science was already a foregone conclusion before the experiment was conducted.
Dr. Rima, I've put on the screen for those of you who are watching this as either a live stream or as an archive version, the screenshot from the webpage from the endgenomicidecongress.com webpage. And I was looking at some of the things that are said here on the page. Very interesting information, folks. Reclaiming Science, Preventing and Reversing Genomicide is a 5-day symposium hosted by Indian Academy of Social Scientists at their 40th Congress, and it's now accepting submissions for presentation and preliminary attendee registration. So, folks, it's not just that this concept has been suggested, it's planned, it's scheduled for December 19th through the 23rd of this year, 2016, in Mysore, in India, and at a distance through electronic communications. I thought, Dr. Rima, I might read some of the introductory material here. I thought it was a good summary, unless you want to comment extemporaneously. Rima, we've lost your audio. Bear with me a moment. You probably can hear me, but...
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you. All right.
Terrific. What I thought we would do is take turns sharing parts of the call for papers. If you will open up the call for papers, which I believe you have. Open.
Yep, I believe this is the same document. This is the document we're talking about the symposium, excellent. Call for papers, timeline, and about Mysore.
Actually, the latest call for papers should have been mounted on the website, but just in case, go to the one joint call for papers with banner and text, so that we're on exactly the same page.
I'm wondering if we're going to be able to do that.
Sure.
If you can give me that link on Skype.
Yes, absolutely. It's already there.
Okay.
But I will do that. Give me 1 second. Live radio, folks. Live radio.
Live stream, actually.
Live stream radio. Here we go. Okay. There we are. There we are.
We'll see if
So,
I can put this on the screen for everyone.
I will begin. The Institute for Health Research, in collaboration with Natural Solutions Foundation and the Indian Academy of Social Sciences, hereby issues this joint call for papers. Independent science, practice, and policy studies, white papers, scholarly studies, and reports which focus on options for ethically enhancing health, environmental integrity, economic and political well-being are invited for either on-site or at-distance presentation at the special symposium on reclaiming science, preventing and reversing genomicide. Do you have it, Ralph?
It's
December-
opening up. It's opening up slowly. Here you go. Okay.
December 19th through 23rd, 2016, Mysore, India, at Mysore University, by the way. Now, of course, the contact language is English, and we are asking for 500-word abstracts. Genomicide. What is genomicide? It is the intentional or with reckless disregard destruction of the genetic matrix and material of one or more species, in this case, the human species. Involuntary transhumanism, or the alteration of the human DNA, is part of this trend. So is the alteration of the planetary and species-specific genome of humans through genetic modification of food, species members, vaccines, radiation, and other means. Alteration of genomic function and expression for the same ends is included in the definition of genomicide.
Now, we have a number of other definitions that are relevant to the call for papers. In addition to genomicide, the next one on the list is informed consent. Let me read that one. Informed consent is the internationally and nationally guaranteed right to agree or disagree to any medical or personal health procedure, including vaccination, genetic alteration, physical, psychological, or mental procedures. The right of informed consent is guaranteed through international and national law to anyone living in any of the 126 signatory nations who are protected by the Geneva Convention. Reference is made to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Bioethics.
And then, what do we mean by reclaiming science? Well, we have to understand commercial science. Any scientific or related endeavor conceived or carried out, manipulated or disseminated in order to further or serve specific agendas, which may include coercing public policy in a particular direction, justification of degradation of the health or the environment of individuals, justification of approval, sales, endorsement, or deployment of products, procedures, or policies which do not serve the best interests of the recipients, but rather the commercial or political interests involved. Examples include intentional genetic alteration to produce infertility, reduction of number, size, intelligence, or ability of specific populations through, quote, scientific findings, and resultant public policy. Commercial science is rife with conflicts of interest in regulatory bodies and scientific reviews.
Right. Now you got to compare that to commercial science to scientific science, also known as real science, which we can define as investigation carried out without regard to a desired outcome and disseminated for replication, discussion, challenge, verification, or falsification. As Dr. Rena explained earlier, right?
As we said earlier, falsification of the hypothesis is the essence of science, but if you want the outcome to be a particular thing, you dare not create a hypothesis that can be falsified. So, convening the symposium, corporate and political interests have perverted real science to the point where it is widely believed vaccination can properly be considered settled, and the voices of those who do not believe it is settled should be silenced. You've heard me talk about the fact that I'm banned by The Guardian in the UK, by all of Rupert Murdoch's papers, and by a large number of other publications, because I dare to say, hold on a minute, vaccination is not good, it doesn't work, and it doesn't help anybody. They don't like that, so they silence me. Given the short shelf life of unshakable scientific truth in any branch of science, and the vital importance of venues to disseminate non-predetermined science, application, and experimentation in order to avoid vast destruction of habitat, humanity, and hope, this symposium has been convened in order to provide approximately 30 hours of local, national, and international discussion and dissemination of meaningful material which brings definition, clarification, and direction to this issue. The urgent need to end the cataclysmic misuse of the scientific method and suppression of real options to increase the health and well-being of the planet and its inhabitants cannot be overstated. And if you think this issue doesn't touch you, then think about the people who live in California, where pseudoscience was used to bamboozle the legislature so that they voted tyranny in a needle for the people of that state, and Australia and others. Ralph, will you go on?
Sure. The presentations will be selected for clarity, independence of thought, potential applicability, and feasibility, with emphasis on clear delineation of issues and meaningful solutions to those issues. The areas to be addressed in the papers that we're requesting, this again is our call for papers, the areas to be addressed are health, education, public policy, regulatory structure and practice, energy and power generation, environmental degradation and restoration, communication technology, radiation, nutrition, agriculture, and food, genomicidal technologies, identification, and countermeasures. So,
As well as others.
As well as others, of course.
Corporate science is being used to forward globalism and its agendas, which include population reduction. And if you don't believe that globalism includes population reduction, do your homework. And the loss of personal liberties and rights, variously referred to by the would-be perpetrators as the great culling of the useless eaters, or Agenda 21, or Agenda 2030, or the depopulation agenda.
The conveners of this symposium, in collaboration with our esteemed colleagues at the Indian Academy of Social Sciences, therefore invite investigators, scientists, innovators, practitioners, advocates, and inventors to share their thrust to identify, solve, and restore the genetic, social, and environmental integrity of the planet and its inhabitants. We seek an end to genomicide.
And the three organizations which are collaborating are the Natural Solutions Foundation, the Institute for Health Research, that's www.inhere.org, INHERE.org, and the Indian Academy of Social Sciences. Let me tell you, I have to give you their website, www.issaindia.org. ISSA dot INDIA dot IN. Now, the Indian Academy of Social Sciences is a huge organization. Everything's huge in India. Why not? They've got 1.2 billion people. The Indian Academy of Social Sciences has been holding annual and other congresses for a long time. This indeed is their 40th year of annual congresses. And the symposium called Reclaiming Science, Preventing and Reversing Genomicide is embedded in their Congress. They asked me to give a speech at the 40th Congress of the Indian Academy of Social Sciences. And I said, I'd be delighted, thank you. Then they asked me to give their public lecture in addition. They have one public lecture. And I said, what an honor. I would be truly delighted. Of course I will come and do that. Then they said, you know what? How about if you convene a symposium on all of the things that enhance and impact the quality of life for everybody on the planet? And I said, what you're really talking about is restoring or reclaiming science and preventing and reversing genomicide. And I said, I will do that. I will convene that symposium for 25 hours plus the special lectures under one condition. And they said, what? And I said, it has to be done locally in Mysore, but also electronically worldwide, not just for attendees, but for presenters, because there are people that I want to speak to the world with real science who won't be able to come to India for reasons of schedule or finances or obligations. I mean, picking up and going to India is a big deal for a lot of people, and certainly is for me. And I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. And Ralph said, yes, that is correct. And General Burt said, yes, that is correct. And then the Indian Academy of Social Sciences said, yes, that is correct. And so we'll be working with the IT people at Mysore University, the sponsoring university, to make this happen. You can attend, you can present, either electronically or in person at Mysore, because we have a big world to pump big information out into. www.endgenomicidecongress.com. Ralph, what's the most exciting thing for you about this Congress?
I think it's the recognition from a prestigious organization for one of the largest countries on the planet, and of the need to address these issues. They didn't shy off of dealing with the word genomicide. And of course, that leads me to a little bit of a history of the word. As you mentioned earlier, General Burt coined the phrase or the term, and it's part of a series of articles that he's written that are part of the Health Freedom blog at drrematruthreports.com. So if you want to go back in time and look at some of that stuff, go to drrematruthreports.com and do some searching in the search engine there. You'll find that what Burt has said basically is that there are a handful of technologies that taken together are literally damaging the genome of not just our species, but of all species on the planet, and that these technologies harm individual humans as well. Dr. Rima, in noticing these technologies and what they did, realized that to a great extent the damage is through free radical channels and certain other channels, and that there is a way to address this injury. So it's not
See,
just,
that's the cool
that's
thing.
right,
That's the cool
exactly.
thing.
It's not just the need to address genomicide, which we're very thankful to have an opportunity to do so on an international, prestigious manner, but it's the opportunity to say, here is the problem, and there is a solution, series of solutions. This is not insurmountable, and we have some serious problems, folks. We have even if all of the genomicidal technologies, the geoengineering, the GMOs, the industrial toxins, the toxins in drugs and vaccines, especially those in vaccines that we actually are crazy enough to inject into our bodies, all of these things were to end tomorrow morning, we would still have literally hundreds of millions of injured individuals. And you know, uh, in response to those who say, for example, to the uh, horrendous pandemic of autism, well, it's just better reporting. There always were these autistic people. I ask, well, so where are all the 50, 60, and 70-year-old people who are autistic? Um, Unless they're recent onset, we call it Alzheimer's, they're not there because it wasn't present 50 years ago in any significant number. We have a situation now where we have millions, tens of millions of people who will need to be taken care of
The
or
latest
cured.
number I heard, for a child born today in the United States to become a person carrying a diagnosis of autism is 1 in 25.
Oh my gosh.
1 in 25.
Well, folks, in the last 4 minutes of the Dr. Rima Truth Reports, we reach the point where we've gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 25. Uh, is that a pandemic? Is that a plague? Uh, it's that's 4% of the population. 1 in 25.
Let me give you a secret.
Yes.
There are two substances which can replace, I believe, about 95% of all of the drugs over the counter and prescription that are used outside of a hospital. And the FDA doesn't like either one of them. One of them is nano silver, 10 parts per million. Immune support to the max, non-toxic for everyone, pets, children, granny, you, everybody. And the other is cannabidiol, CBD, in either of two formulations, one with antioxidants as a capsule and one just pure CBD in organic hemp seed nutritional oil. Those are available at our website, www.nsfmarketplace.com. N as in natural, S as in solutions, F as in foundation, nsfmarketplace.com.
And you can see, folks, on the screen, I've opened up that particular page. That's what you'll see when you get there. Everything you need from chocolate to silver. What more do
And
you
the
need?
point is, if you're reclaiming science without reclaiming your own autonomy, you're not doing it right. If you're reclaiming your own autonomy without demanding real science, you're not doing it right. As Carol Rosin said, the aerospace industry is corrupted in the same way that the food industry is, that the vaccine industry is, that the drug industry is. We didn't touch about the education industry.
Right.
Because the people who want this corruption to proceed in a particular way have in mind a very specific outcome, and they have woven themselves into the control positions of all of them. And so what we're talking about is not the globalism, but the planetary vision that each of us has of being a healthy, happy, autonomous individual living on a healthy, sustaining planet. And to do that, we need to take action, responsibility, and have real science to base our actions upon, as well as real love. That's our charge, that's our mission, and frankly, that's our only hope.
Thank you all so much for being with us for another live stream episode of Dr. Rima Truth Reports. We'll be back next week. We have a very interesting guest who's going to tell us about the aroma dome. So some more interesting healing ideas. Thank you for being with us. Thus
Thank you.
ends another live stream.